Thank you so much for joining me today, Akeem. I am so excited to learn more about real estate and pick your brain on a lot of these questions that not only do I have, but get asked often by my clients. So before we hit it off, I want you to tell me and anyone that's watching the video just a little bit about yourself, your experience, what you do. Maybe give us a little bit of insight on what makes you tick, some of that information.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I want to start with the shirt that I'm wearing. I wore it very purposely for this interview. It's black and gold, one, because I'm an alumni, but also looking at the back, it is a Kobe Bryant jersey. I don't know if you got a good shot of that just now, but yeah, it's a Kobe Bryant jersey. I'm a big fan of the Mamba mentality and that hard work ethic, and obviously a big fan of Kobe Bryant in general. And I know The Last Dance actually just came out this past weekend, which is a documentary on the Bulls and Jordan. So I'm kind of in that basketball frame of mind here in quarantine. But yeah, so I'm an alumni, big sports fan, obviously, a realtor, and still an athlete to this day. So just a little bit about me, and yeah.
Absolutely love it. So tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah. So in real estate, as a realtor, my job is primarily to be an expert on real estate for my clients. So when I'm dealing with clients, especially with buyers, a lot of the buyers that I deal with are first-time home buyers. So they don't really know what they don't know. So a lot of the times I'm guiding them through the whole real estate process, which is a process that can take some time. It takes diligence, it takes persistence, but you know, and at the end of the day, when you do hire a realtor and you do have that professional guiding you, it is something that is simpler, because it can be something that is complicated. It can be something that has a lot of steps, has a lot of rules that you have to follow. But working with the right team, you can always simplify that process and make it easy.
Absolutely love it. You mentioned some questions that I want to dive into deeper in just a moment. But before we get there, what are
Yeah.
the benefits of buying versus renting? How does someone know when the right time is to buy?
Yeah. So when you're looking at buying versus renting, that a lot of the times that's a personal decision that you have to make. But in general, I'm just going to go over a few points on, the benefits of buying versus the benefits of renting. So first, to start off, when you're looking at the benefits of renting, you're going to have that lower upfront cost. Obviously, when you're renting out a place, you don't have to put a down payment. There's no closing costs associated with that. Usually it's just the security deposit and first month's rent. So upfront cost is going to be lower when you're renting. Also, when you're renting, the flexibility is going to be a little higher. So as you are renting, you do have that ability to, just live a more flexible lifestyle where you can move, you can sublease. There's not a lot of hassle with moving around. Lastly, I'd probably say one of the biggest benefits of renting is not having to worry about the repairs. So as a homeowner, the repairs are always on you. It's your house, your responsibility. But as a renter, it still is the owner's responsibility. So it's something that you can kind of push off on the owner. And, a lot of the times you're submitting these work requests or however the management works with the renting. But yeah, just to summarize, the repairs aren't your responsibility as a renter, but they are as a homeowner.
Okay.
So then going into the other side, what are the benefits of buying versus renting? So one of the biggest benefits of buying would be owning a versatile asset, right? So you buy this home, and no matter what your intention with the home is, this structure can be used for a lot of different avenues. So obviously you can live there, and that's a benefit in itself, having a roof over your head. Also, you can use it as an investment. So then, say you do buy a home, you do decide to move, you can sell it and you can, recoup the money that way. Or you could also then go ahead and rent that property and have that asset bring in cash flows from month to month. So that's a couple of ways to leverage the home. You can also, as you're paying a mortgage, you're building what's called equity, which is basically value in the home that's greater than the amount that you owe. So let's say, for example, you have a home that's worth $250,000. So you paid, let's just say 25,000, 10%, 25,000 when you bought the home as a down payment. and you've been paying off the mortgage for years. So now you have, let's say, 30,000 in equity. So what that means is that when you sell the house now, let's say the house is now worth 260. It's gone up a little bit. And the money that you put in the down payment is equity. The money that you pay down in the mortgage is equity. And the increased value of the home is
Mm.
also equity. So when you go to sell that house, all that equity can then be turned to cash, cash in hand. And you can also leverage equity through a variety of ways through um, different mortgage terms. So I'm not going to go into all the different ways to leverage equity, but equity is a real big, valuable asset within the home itself. And I think a lot of first-time home buyers don't think about. Another one, I'd say greater privacy is another big advantage to owning a home, because when you're renting, a lot of the times it's going to be a townhome, it's going to be an apartment, it's going to be something where you're just interacting with people more. Not to mention, you're always going to have that landlord that will be keeping an eye on you. But as a homeowner, you have that greater level of privacy, you have that greater level of responsibility and freedom to do what you want with the place that you own. And then, yeah, I said the last pro that I had just listed out for this was that the stability in owning a home is greater than when you're renting a home. Again, going back to the example of renting and having that landlord, rents can, increase from year to year. Whereas with a mortgage, you're going to have that fixed payment that's going to stay the same for the next, 15, 30, whatever amount. Another benefit of owning a home is the tax benefits. So while you have that mortgage outstanding on your home, that's debt that you have, and that can be leveraged against income that you have from a rental property or I'm no tax expert. I don't know all of that it can be leveraged against, but there are tax benefits to owning a home and through depreciation, and then obviously the debt and the mortgage.
Awesome. Wow, such great insight. So, if someone is thinking about moving from renting to buying, what are some things that they need to know to buy a house? What does it take to buy a house?
Yeah. To buy a house, really, I think it takes a lot less than what a lot of people may think it takes to buy a house. I'll get into that a little bit more later. But really, what it takes to buy a house is something you'd have to discuss in detail with a mortgage lender. But overall, really what you need is consistent income for 1 to 2 years or greater, and then having the savings built in for those costs that you have with associated with buying a house, which is going to be your down payment, and that's also going to be your closing costs, which is something I don't think a lot of first-time homebuyers think about. But closing costs typically are around 3% of the purchase price of a home. So
Mhm.
going back to that $250,000 home example, closing costs of about $7,500. So just keeping those two things in mind. So having that consistent income and also having the money to put a down payment and close on a home. Those are two of the biggest things it takes to buy. And then beyond that, it's going to be, credit, debt to income, and really those are things you can discuss with the mortgage lender, and they can go into greater detail. But that's what's going to decide the size of your loan, the structure, the interest rate, and all those kind of things.
You're right. I think a lot of people don't realize closing costs are also something that need to be taken into consideration. And you touched upon such an important part of consistency with income and understanding your credit, leveraging a knowledgeable mortgage lender. I think those are all really great tips. So, moving on, why
Yeah,
should a
for,
buyer use a realtor? What's the benefit of using you?
yeah. So when buying a home, one great benefit of using a realtor is the fact that it's free, or at least it should be. Some realtors can charge up to $400 for buyers, but really the majority of realtors are free of charge to buyers. The sellers are paying that on their end. Um, so it's really just hiring an expert free of charge. And what do you get with that? So when you hire the realtor, now you have an expert in the field and they're going to guide you through this transaction. So from the very beginning, making sure your credit and your savings and your income is all right to then buy a home, all the way through to closing on that house. You're going to have that expert there helping you. And they're also going to be an expert in the market, the neighborhood, or just in standard housing practices. So as you're going through that transaction, you're going to have that expert there to guide you through. So for example, let's say you found the house that you like and you're ready to move on this house now. You want to put in the offer. So a lot of the times, if you're working on your own behalf, you just submit an offer, right? But having that real estate professional that can guide you with an offer, you always want a pre-approval letter, which is that letter you're going to get from your lender, which is going to say your loan amount that you're eligible for, as well as the terms of the loan. So the length of it, the interest rate, and the payments, all that. And you're going to want to submit that with the offer to show the seller that you're serious, to show them that you're already qualified, show them that you're ready to buy, show them that you're ready to close. So just little things like that through each step of the transaction is where a realtor is going to come in handy. Not to mention negotiations. That's a big part of the home buying process. I know a lot of first-time home buyers, they see like the listing price and they're like, oh, they look at it as a suggestion, when a lot of the times the listing price is reached by comparing it to other homes in the area. So a lot of the times the listing price will be pretty accurate. Obviously you want a realtor that will double check, do the research on their own, but the negotiations really happen after the house is under contract, and then we go into inspections, appraisals, those kind of things, and that's where then you can negotiate down the price, or whatever happens during that time.
Okay. So you talked.
Is this all making sense, or am I going?
It is. I just wish I had spoken with you when I went to buy a house the first time, because I feel like I'm learning so much, especially with the negotiations part of it. I thought, oh, I'm confident enough to negotiate on my own behalf. But you're right. I think if I were able to leverage your experience during that time, I think I probably would have gotten a little bit more money after the inspections. But that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, confidence is great in negotiations, but I think the biggest part is not the confidence, but the knowledge of knowing what to do and all that kind of stuff. Because in one of my first transactions in real estate, there was after inspections, there was a window that needed repairing, and the seller had told me about that window and that it may need repairing. So what we did was we went and got a estimate on window repairs before the inspection ever happened. So we were ready to, we knew what the cost was before it became an issue. So by the time it did become an issue, the buyers then went and got out their own quote, which is actually $200 higher than ours. And we were able to come back and say, no, it should actually only cost this much. So knock $200 off the price. And not only that, we were also able to negotiate further and get the buyers to pay half of that. So
Wow.
save the sellers about $1,000 on that one. So
That's
just
awesome.
having that knowledge and preparation up front it'll save you money.
It does. And I feel like as first time home buyers, like you mentioned earlier, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this common misconception that because we can do a lot of the research on Zillow and realtor.com and even watching HGTV, that we've become pseudo experts, when in reality it does give us some knowledge and some jargon understanding, but we don't have our realtor's license, we don't have the experience. And I think you're right. I think leveraging someone, especially as a buyer where your services are free or near free, is so important. And I think that it needs to be taken advantage of more. But like myself, I didn't realize it was a free service when I went to go buy my townhome. So I wish I would have known that sooner in the process.
Yeah.
So we talk about, me not understanding the fact that that was free when I went to go buy a house a couple years ago. What are some other common first-time home buyer myths or misconceptions? Tell me more about those.
Yeah. So one of the biggest ones that I run into most often is a lot of people think you have to put 20% down on a
Yes,
house.
I had
And
this
that
conversation yesterday.
that is simply not the case.
No.
There's actually a loan called the FHA loan, which is a loan from the Federal Housing Administration, where you can actually put 3.5% down. So that's what I typically tell people is anywhere from 3.5% to 20% is typical.
Hmm.
A lot of the times you'll see 10 and 15% down. But yeah, you can get as low as 3.5%. A lot of first time home buyers think, oh, I gotta save up 20% of the house I'm buying.
Hmm.
Going back to that same example, 250,000, I'd be saving up 50,000, which is quite a big nest egg, but you don't need to save up quite that much to put a down payment on a house.
Okay.
So that's one myth that I come across a lot, especially with first time home buyers. Another one that I come across is that it's cheaper to rent than to own, which that depends on the market. Um, some markets it's cheaper to rent, some markets it's cheaper to own. In my market, the Orlando market, it is cheaper to own more often than not. So that's something that I encourage is, just look at the numbers, and a lot of the times paying a mortgage on a house is going to be cheaper than paying a rent on that same house.
Hmm.
Another misconception is that all lenders are the same. Another transaction that I was dealing with an investor, and they were trying to buy a condo, and their lender required 30% down for all condo purchases. So, we put in a offer got accepted, and then once it got accepted, that's when we learned about the 30% down with their lender. So she was like, "Oh, I'm not prepared to put 30% down. I want to back out." This is when all lenders are not the same comes into play. I then went back to one of my preferred lenders, because this buyer already had a lender before I met her. But I went back to one of my preferred lenders, talked to him about the situation. He was like, "Yeah, we can do 20% down for condominiums." So yeah, that's just a little anecdotal story to say not all lenders are the same on a lot of things. There's um, a lot of different things that lenders can do, and a lot of different what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of different requirements that lenders have. So lender A may have a requirement that lender B doesn't. Lender B may offer you a lower interest rate than lender A, and just anything and everything in between.
So,
So I really encourage shopping around
okay.
with lenders as you're looking to purchase a home, um, just to see, who's the best lender for you and why. So
Okay.
there's a lot of different factors that go in there, but every lender is not created equal. Definitely different. I touched on this earlier, but again, a lot of first-time homebuyers, they see like a listing price and they think, oh, let's just go 10 under, let's go 20 under that price. So if it's listed at 200, they're like, oh, let's offer 190. In the Orlando market, a lot of homes are going for that full asking price because they are priced right to begin with.
Okay.
So just keeping that in mind, and then again, you can negotiate down later, but keeping in mind that a lot of the times, I'd go as far to say 9 times out of 10, that listing price is something that's based on recent purchases, is based on the market, and it will be something that's pretty fair. um, Another one is that you need a perfect credit score to buy a home, and that is simply not the case. As I said earlier, lenders can work with a variety of different circumstances.
Okay.
So having perfect credit is not necessary to buy a home. Obviously, the better your credit, the better the mortgage terms. But yeah, you don't need 750 to buy a home. You don't need I've seen um, people get approved for mortgages with as low as like a 660. Um, so yeah, it's just you don't need perfect credit to get it done.
Okay. Okay.
Those are a few that I had off the top of my head just through my experiences dealing with first-time home buyers. But I don't know if you'd have any misconceptions that you had um, broken just now, or if you had anything in your mind that.
No, I think you hit on all of them. and even mentioned some that I didn't even think of. I'd forgotten about the credit score one, in all honesty. But
Yeah.
I do get the questions oftentimes about the down payment. People don't even realize that there are closing costs, which escrow is included in that. Um, you touched upon shopping around for mortgages. I think you answered it all. So if someone had more questions and they wanted to reach out to you to get those questions answered, or maybe wanted to look at hiring you to be their buyer's agent, what's the best way to contact you, or what methods of communication do you have?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm a realtor, so I'm always just I'm everywhere. So there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's obviously the phone and email, my website as well. That's a few ways to contact me.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to answer my questions and provide your insight. I know that the viewers will take so much value from this, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
No, thank you.